Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to imagine being a detective, finding the exact same, really unusual fingerprint at crime scenes on completely different continents.
Right.
And this is long before international travel even existed. You would immediately assume there has to be a single suspect, like a single shared origin point.
Exactly. You'd be looking for ground zero. And welcome to the deep dive, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes, welcome. I'm your host, and today we are tracking down that exact detective scenario. But the fingerprint we are looking at is a terrifying global myth.
It really is. It's one of the most persistent mysteries out there.
It is. We are exploring this massive, lingering question about human history. Basically, why do totally disconnected ancient cultures across the globe, cultures that literally never interacted, share the exact same story?
The story of divine beings descending to Earth, right?
Exactly. Beings coming down, creating hybrid offspring, and triggering a cataclysmic flood. So our mission today is to examine whether these are just basic human archetypes, like primitive campfire storytelling, or if they are the shattered fragments of a single historical event.
Yeah, and examining this specific pattern, it really encourages us to question our baseline assumptions about antiquity.
How so?
Well, it challenges you to look at ancient texts not just as like primitive fiction, but as a complex, shared human memory that has been broken apart and scattered all over the place.
A scattered memory. I like that.
Right. And to understand that scattered memory, we first have to look at the pattern of ancient human civilization, specifically focusing on the moment the story splits.
Okay, so where do we start?
When you look at the post-flood world, you see these incredibly advanced civilizations suddenly appearing on the timeline. I mean, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Indus Valley.
Right, they just sort of pop up.
They pop up almost overnight. They have complex agriculture, urban planning, and a mathematical precision that modern engineers still marvel at.
Oh, for sure. The Great Pyramid of Giza is usually the prime example people give of this sudden, inexplicable leap in capability.
Exactly.
Which always begs the question of where that knowledge actually came from. But how does the emergence of these civilizations tie back to the shattered memory of divine beings?
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the ancient texts point to a very specific turning point for this sudden explosion of civilization and its subsequent fragmentation.
The Tower of Babel.
Yes, the Tower of Babel. The ancient scriptural narrative states that before Babel, humanity shared one language and one collective memory.
They remembered what happened.
They had a unified, terrifying understanding of what had happened before the flood. They remembered the reality of divine rule, the beings who came down from the heavens, and the deluge that was sent to wipe the slate clean.
And then Babel happens, and everything breaks apart.
Right. At Babel, the languages were scattered. And when those languages scattered, the mythologies diverged.
That is so wild to think about. Each tribe essentially walked away from Babel, fiercely protecting their own localized translation of the exact same reality.
That's a great way to put it. The unified story fractured into different cultural lenses.
Right. So the Sumerians go off to Mesopotamia, and they call these beings the Anunnaki. The Egyptians settle along the Nile and remember them as the Neteru. In the ancient Hindu tradition, they become the Devas. The Greeks mythologize them as the Titans and Olympians. And of course, the Hebrews record them as the Watchers.
And despite the different names and the vast geographical distances, the core elements of the story remain absolutely identical across every single one of those cultures.
It's like a checklist.
It really is. First, you have divine beings ruling humanity directly, like physically present on the earth, not just acting from afar in the clouds somewhere.
Wait, what's a second?
Second, you have the mixing of divine and human bloodlines, creating hybrid offspring with immense power. You know, think of the Greek heroes like Hercules or Achilles.
Or the biblical Nephilim.
Exactly, the Nephilim. Third, you have a global flood that isn't characterized as a random natural disaster. It's always a deliberate cosmic response to the violent corruption these beings cause.
And then there's the knowledge aspect.
Yeah. Finally, you have the sudden, deliberate sealing away of advanced knowledge.
It is honestly like they all witnessed the exact same catastrophic car crash from different corners of an intersection.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Thanks. And then they went on to tell the story using their own distinct cultural vocabularies.
Precisely.
So to really understand the specifics of that crash, we have to zoom in from the global pattern to the specific textual tradition that has arguably generated the most theological controversy per word in human history.
You're talking about the Hebrew account in Genesis chapter 6.
I am. Genesis 6. It's, 4 verses long?
Genesis 6, verses 1 through 4, just 4 verses.
4 verses that have basically caused a millennia of debate.
Oh, absolutely. Those verses introduce a concept that scholars and theologians have just agonized over. The text plainly states that the sons of God, the Ben Elohim in the original Hebrew, saw the daughters of men, married them, and produced the Nephilim.
And the Nephilim are described as these giant, mighty heroes of old.
Right. And the text positions this unnatural union as the direct catalyst that triggers the global flood.
Only 4 verses, yet they carry so much weight. Now, historians generally divide the interpretations of who these sons of God actually were into 3 massive camps.
They do. The first one is often called the ruler view.
Okay, break that down for us.
This is the idea that the sons of God were just human kings or tyrants who were hoarding wives and building powerful aristocratic bloodlines.
Which I guess aligns with how ancient kings often describe themselves in Mesopotamia and Egypt.
Yeah, literally claiming to be the literal sons of the gods to legitimize their rule.
But there's a pretty glaring issue with that, isn't there?
A massive one. The ruler view doesn't adequately explain the consequences. I mean, why would normal, albeit tyrannical, human behavior like polygamy trigger a cosmic flood that wipes out all terrestrial life?
It seems like a massive overreaction for just guys having too many wives. Which brings up the second historical interpretation, the Sethite view.
Ah, yes. The Sethite view.
From what I understand, this was championed by early Christian theologians like Augustine. The argument here is that the sons of God were just the righteous human descendants of Seth, the third son of Adam.
Right.
And these righteous men made the mistake of marrying the corrupt human daughters of Cain.
And this view became overwhelmingly popular in later centuries because, honestly, it completely removes the theological discomfort of the passage.
It cleans it up.
It does. It keeps the blame entirely on human moral failure and strips away any mythological overtones. For theologians influenced by Greek philosophy, which insisted the spiritual realm was entirely separate from the physical realm, while the Sethite view was a highly convenient sanitization of the text.
I have to express some serious skepticism about that, though. I mean, isn't the Sethite view just academic backpedaling?
How do you mean?
It feels entirely like later theologians trying to sanitize a raw ancient reality simply because it made them squeamish. I mean, if we were just talking about regular, quote-unquote, righteous guys marrying regular corrupt women, how in the world does that union produce the Nephilim?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. The text explicitly calls their offspring mighty heroes and giants. The production of superhuman, giant anomalies from standard human intermarriage makes absolutely zero biological or logical sense.
You are hitting on the exact reason why the oldest readers of the text completely rejected that view. The absurdity of righteous humans producing giant offspring is precisely what leads us to the third historical interpretation.
The angel view.
The angel view. This is the understanding that the Ben Elohim were divine beings who literally crossed the boundary between heaven and earth.
And this wasn't some fringe theory back then, right?
Yeah, not at all. The angel view was the undisputed dominant interpretation in Second Temple Judaism. That's the cultural and historical era right around the time of Jesus.
So it was the mainstream understanding for the people closest to the original language and culture of the text.
Exactly. The people who actually lived inside that ancient worldview didn't flinch at the physical mechanics of it. They took it at face value.
They just accepted it as history.
They absolutely did. And we know this because it is heavily supported by the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered at Qumran, which contained multiple copies of the Book of Enoch.
Ah, the Book of Enoch, which is entirely dedicated to expanding on this angelic rebellion.
Yes. The angel view is supported by ancient Jewish historians like Josephus and Philo. We even see it explicitly endorsed in the New Testament.
Really? Where?
The letters of Jude and 2 Peter make direct references to angels who abandoned their proper dwelling and were chained in darkness until judgment. It wasn't until much later that church fathers suppressed this view, essentially deciding that angels were strictly incorporeal, meaning the text couldn't possibly mean what it literally says. They changed the interpretation to fit their developed theology, rather than letting the ancient text speak for itself.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. If we accept that oldest angelic interpretation, then this event wasn't just some floating ethereal myth happening in the clouds.
No, it was physical.
It had a specific GPS coordinate on planet Earth, a literal point of impact.
Yes, it did.
According to the Book of Enoch, there were 200 of these watchers, led by an entity named Samiaza, and they descended in the days of the patriarch Jared. And the exact location they touched down was Mount Hermon.
Mount Hermon.
For anyone listening who is unfamiliar, Mount Hermon is a massive, imposing, snow-capped mountain over 2,800 meters high, sitting right at the northernmost boundary of ancient Israel.
And what's fascinating here is how the ancient world understood geography and cosmology. Mount Hermon wasn't just a tall hill, you know. It was the physical edge of the known world for the Israelites.
The border.
Right. In ancient cosmology, borders and edges were highly significant. They were considered thresholds, the specific places where the membrane between the human realm and the divine realm was the thinnest. It was the logical place for a cosmic incursion.
And what they did at that threshold is permanently etched into the name of the mountain itself. The linguistic history here is just wild to me.
Oh, the etymology of Hermon?
Yeah. Before they descended, Samyaza was terrified he would end up taking all the blame for this rebellion. So he forced all 200 watchers to swear a mutual imprecation, a binding shared curse of guilt, ensuring they were all in it together.
Right.
The Hebrew root word for a sacred ban, or an oath of total destruction, is spelled Cherem, pronounced Cherem. Geographically, the name Hermon comes directly from that exact same root. The mountain literally remembers the oath.
It is the mountain of the Cherem. It transitions from being just a topographical feature on a map to a lasting monument of a cosmic transgression.
And the archaeology backs this up, doesn't it?
The archaeological record completely backs up this sense of dark, profound significance. At the very peak of Mount Hermon, archaeologists have found the remains of a temple to Zeus.
At the very top.
At the peak. It is one of the highest altitude cult sites in the ancient world, meaning people went to extreme, exhausting lengths to worship at that specific peak.
And then there's the base of the mountain.
Right. At the base of the mountain, in a place called Banias, there was an ancient temple dedicated to Pan. This temple was built around a massive cave that the ancients literally believed was a physical gate to the underworld.
So you have a descent from the heavens commemorated at the peak, and a literal gateway to hell worshipped at the base. It functions as a complete cosmological axis of corruption.
It really does.
But there is this incredible poetic reversal that happens much later in the biblical narrative. In the New Testament, the Synoptic Gospels describe Jesus taking his core disciples up to a high mountain near Caesarea Philippi, which is located right at the base of Hermon, for the event known as the Transfiguration.
Right. This is the moment where his appearance changes, his face shines like the sun, and divine glory is visibly revealed to the disciples.
That is the exact same mountain.
Yeah.
The Transfiguration takes place on Mount Hermon.
Yes.
You have divine glory, affirmation, and restoration manifesting on the exact same physical rock where divine corruption and rebellion originally descended. The mountain of the fallen watchers becomes the mountain of transfiguration. The narrative symmetry is just staggering.
It serves as a profound geographical reclamation of that space. But exploring what actually happened after that original descent is crucial, though.
What do you mean?
Well, the Watchers didn't just cross a geographic border and take human wives. The ancient traditions insist they initiated a catastrophic, premature technological revolution.
Oh, right. The forbidden knowledge. The Book of Enoch essentially reads like a criminal charge sheet. It lists exactly who taught what to humanity.
It's very specific.
It is. We aren't talking about vague concepts of evil. Azazel taught the making of swords, shields, metallurgy, and the art of cosmetics.
Right.
Samyaza taught sorcery and magical herbalism. Armaros taught how to resolve enchantments or counterspells. Barakehal and Kokabiel taught astrology and the reading of the stars.
And it gets darker.
Yeah, Kosdeia taught the dark arts of medicine, specifically the striking of the embryo in the womb or abortion. And then there's Penemu, who taught humanity the use of ink and paper.
This raises an important question, though. Why were these specific teachings considered a cosmic crime?
Right.
Look closely at the list. Metallurgy, astronomy, writing. These are not inherently evil technologies. They are the building blocks of modern civilization.
I mean, we're relying on several of them just to record and distribute this deep dive to you today. How could learning to forge metal or map the stars necessitate a global flood?
Well, the ancient theological framework here isn't that the knowledge itself was inherently wicked. The crime was the timing.
The time.
The knowledge was given prematurely. These technologies gave early humans immense, unnatural power over the physical environment, over the unseen spiritual world, and most dangerously, over each other.
Ah, I see.
Humanity simply did not have the moral development or the wisdom to handle that kind of power. The Watchers collapsed a developmental timeline that was intended to unfold gradually over millennia, forcing early humans into an industrialized state of warfare and manipulation.
It is like handing the launch codes for a nuclear arsenal to a toddler. The technology absolutely works, the missiles will fire, but the maturity to understand the consequences and use it responsibly just isn't there.
Exactly. It guarantees catastrophic self-destruction.
And we see this exact same theme echoed everywhere in ancient literature. It was Prometheus stealing fire from the gods and giving it to mortals in Greek myth.
Right, or the Apkallu.
The fish-sage demigods of Sumerian texts, emerging from the sea to hand early humans the codes of civilization. It is the exact same shared memory of forbidden knowledge being dropped into our laps before we were ready.
But out of all the charges on that list, the inclusion of writing specifically ink and paper taught by the Watcher Penemu is perhaps the most philosophically revealing.
How so?
It forces us to ask why the ability to write would be condemned alongside the creation of weapons of war.
The brilliant paradox of Penemu is one of the most fascinating aspects of this entire topic to me.
It really is.
The author of the Book of Enoch is literally using ink and paper to write down a condemnation of the very invention of ink and paper. The text recognizes its own paradox.
It does.
The argument embedded in the text is that writing fundamentally alters human consciousness. It allows for the manufacturing of false certainty.
Exactly. In a purely oral culture, knowledge is community checked. You have to speak your truth in front of elders who can verify or challenge it.
But with writing,
Writing allows an individual to fix testimony in isolation, creating a kind of deception that an oral culture naturally resists. Writing allows humans to pretend they have a wisdom they don't actually possess, separating the knowledge from the lived experience of the person sharing it.
it acts as a profound ancient critique of how technology divorces us from authentic truth.
Exactly. The Watchers gave humanity the tools to build a massive civilization, but those exact same tools became the direct instruments of their total corruption.
The weapons led to mass, industrialized slaughter.
The metallurgy led to resource hoarding and exploitation.
The magic and cosmetics led to manipulation and the commodification of the human body.
It created a world so violently out of balance, so thoroughly ruined by premature power, that the ancient texts claim a cosmic reset was the only remaining option to save the human race from itself.
The flood.
The flood. The Watchers themselves, the architects of this premature revolution, were judged for their interference.
And their punishment was severe.
Texts across the ancient world, including the New Testament letters of Peter and Jude, state that these beings were bound in chains and sealed away in a subterranean abyssal prison called Tartarus.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Why should you care about the ancient Levantine geography of Mount Hermon, the linguistic roots of the word Cherem, or a centuries-old debate over Genesis 6?
Because understanding this global fingerprint fundamentally changes how you consume history and myth.
It really does. It challenges you to look at the very foundations of human civilization through an entirely different lens.
Right. Next time you look at a documentary on the pyramids or read about the sudden, inexplicable emergence of Sumerian mathematics, you won't just be looking at random, isolated sparks of human genius.
No. If this framework holds true, you are looking at the fallout of a terrifying shared global encounter. You are looking at the surviving fragments of a shattered human memory.
It suggests the sweeping mythologies our ancestors passed down weren't just, primitive attempts to explain thunder or the changing of the seasons.
They were trying to remember.
They were desperate, traumatized attempts across dozens of different languages and cultures to record an event that permanently altered the trajectory of our species.
That leaves us with one final, incredibly chilling concept to leave you with today.
Oh, right. The prison.
Yes. The ancient texts, whether it's the Book of Enoch or the New Testament letters, are highly specific about the nature of the Watcher's punishment. They state that these beings were sealed away in Tartarus, bound in darkness, until the final judgment.
Until. That is the operative word in those texts.
It explicitly implies their imprisonment isn't permanent. Think about the implications of that for a second.
It's unsettling.
Very. If this global historical memory is true, if the fingerprint we've been tracking across all these ancient crime scenes points to a literal event and these beings were simply sealed away rather than destroyed, what happens if that ancient pre-flood seal has an expiration date?
Right. What happens when a modern humanity, a humanity which has entirely forgotten its own origins, suddenly encounters its ancient influencers once that door breaks open?
It sets the stage for a terrifying collision of ancient suppressed power and modern cultural amnesia.
It certainly does.
Imagine being that detective, finally tracking down the owner of that impossible global fingerprint, only to realize the suspect hasn't been dead for millennia. They've just been waiting.
Waiting in the dark.
Something for you to mull over until our next deep dive.